Hello and welcome to Talkin Trim. I'm Jonathan Skinner and today we're looking at some fully trimmed front seats, rear seats and rear luggage floor area for the Jaguar E-Type 2+2 models. We've also got the little centre cushion armrest in between the front seats as well. Specifically this is from a Series 3 E-Type 2+2, which that's unique to in that particular design. But the rest of it is fairly common to the Series 1s to Series 3s. They're not exactly the same, like the seat covers do actually change and the seat frames as well. But the overall look and aesthetic of them is very much within that ballpark. The rear seats are pretty much the same. Again, the design of them in terms of the embossed leather did vary. And some of them had moquette in other areas where the other ones had vinyl, but apart from that, they're the same. And then same principle again with the rear luggage floor. Very, very similar, if not exactly the same. So overall, it's a bit of a guide to 2+2, front seats, rear seats and rear luggage floor, but with a pinch of salt because it is from a Series 3. Now, it's worth noting that this is a bit of a continuation video. I've done a couple of videos beforehand showcasing these specific seats at different stages, showcasing the hardware that we've used in terms of seat foams and things like that, and the condition of the originals when you strip them down. And this is the final installment as such, as it's showing everything fully trimmed up, ready to be collected by our customer. Before I dive on in, it's worth checking out the description below. I do these videos off the top of my head, and thus I'm almost certain to forget something. So read the description below, as that might fill in the blanks. There's also some great links to our website, our materials and colours library, which is really showcasing the wide options available to you in terms of both colours and materials, whether you're working to OEM factory spec or a more bespoke interior. And there's also obviously a contact us page to contact us about your restoration project, as well as our blog and handbook area, which has some great articles about different areas of our business and the ethos that we have. It's important to remember with choosing an interior trim supplier that interior trim is arguably the least standardized area of a restoration. Just because someone says that they're supplying leather seat covers for an E-Type, after that everything changes. So you really shouldn't be looking to base your purchase on price and availability and a very vague description. You need more information than that, and this is exactly why I've done this YouTube channel. If you look at our website, we've got hundreds of photos showcasing not just our products as you receive them, but also trimmed up cars from all over the world from satisfied customers who have taken the time and effort to actually send me photos of their cars. Remember, we don't take any cars in. Everything is shipped out pretty much. And so that really does show and prove how satisfied our customers are on a global scale and have been for almost half a century. But then I've got this YouTube channel as well. And the reason I set this YouTube channel was to try and bring you to our factory. Anyone that's ever visited our factory has always been very impressed with the setup and the lengths and depths that we go to on even the minutest of details. Everyone always enjoys the tour that I give. So I figured the best way of bringing people to our factory and really showcasing our products is to do videos. So that's one of the reasons. The other reason is obviously to show and prove that everything fits as it should fit. Everything these days is cut extremely standardized on the CNC CAD cutter to the millimeter, including leather. It's a very cool machine that cuts all of our materials for us. And thus we know that we're making things consistently each time. It's extremely hard due to the internal processes we do to make a mistake. And thus we know that the kits that we supply are extremely consistent and should be assumed to be correct. And thus you're almost eliminating that myth, shall we say, that pre-manufactured kits don't fit classic cars. There's a certain element of truth to that because obviously the cars were made during a very non-standardized era of production, but realistically a lot of other suppliers use that as an excuse for their poor fitting parts in terms of their patterns and templates and understanding of those parts. We are not those companies. We know that our parts fit 9 times out of 10, if not more. They will fit absolutely fine. And actually, even if you're having any issues, the way we make our kits, we make them fairly easy to be altered. And then ultimately, if there is an issue for whatever reason, then we will sort that out for you. We're very proud of our reputation within the industry. We're not just about making that sale and forgetting about it. We want you to be satisfied overall. We want to see photos of your car when it's all done. We're extremely proud as a business of making the best kits in the world, and thus that's part of our ethos as a business. So just bear that in mind when you're making your selections as a supplier, and this is what that blog handbook area really does show, as well as my YouTube channel. Anyway, enough on that. Sorry, I got sidetracked. So these seats here, they've been done to OEM factory spec, so commonly referred to as leather. Strictly speaking, it's leather faced. Basically, the seats, when you sit in them, the bits that touch your body are leather, and then the backs and the surrounds are vinyl. So for these front seats here, that bit there is vinyl. The back here is vinyl, and the retainer for the cushion down here is vinyl. Everything else is leather. The piping is leathercloth as per original specifications. And pretty much for all colours that we offer, leathercloth is the standardised one that we'll do for piping, not vinyl. Vinyl we have to use for a couple of colours because leathercloth is not available, but we do talk to people about this beforehand. You can use vinyl for piping, but it's not the ideal scenario. And it's worth noting that as well. A lot of other companies out there, they'll just use vinyl as standard for their piping because they don't want to have to stock that extra material of leathercloth vinide, which is the official stuff. So again, check out the video that I'm going to be making on piping, because again, it's such a small thing, but the lengths we go to make sure these sort of things are correct are incredible. And again, it's one of those areas that when people come round and I show them that part, is one of the areas that blows them away the most, is our dedication to even the smallest of details. So anyway, that's the spec there. Effectively, what people call leather, we refer to as leather faced. Not to be confused with full leather, which is an upgrade option that we can do where everything is leather. So we replace the vinyl on the surrounds and the back with leather as well. The piping still would remain leathercloth. We can do piping in leather if you really want, but obviously there's a fairly significant surcharge involved in that. So anything's possible, but they're the general parameters we work within. If we're doing a full leather bespoke seat, generally speaking, the piping is still leathercloth unless we talk about any other options. Centre cushion armrest, again, it's the leather spec. So the top part here is leather, but everything else is vinyl. Trimmed boards inside, replacement boards, they're all standard in our kit as well. Even the foam padding on that there we've replaced, which is an optional extra outside the scope of the normal kit, just FYI. But it's always worth doing because you want it to be plump and filled out. Often a lot of people assume they can get away with reusing their original foam, and they find that the corners sag a lot, and it's because they're using 60-year-old foam. You need to get that plumpness in it. Rear seats, again, similar principle. Everything on this top section here is leather, but the surround here is vinyl, and the retainers on the back here are vinyl as well. You can see it's all hog-ringed around. It's worth noting on the Series 1 cars, this sometimes was moquette, and generally speaking, it was only Series 2 and Series 3s that had this embossed pattern on them. Same again on the front seats, as you can see, and the headrest in the centre there. Bear that in mind. Worth noting as well that you've got to make sure that the person that's fitting these is vaguely accustomed to the fitment process, because there are certain techniques you need, and this is the problem inherently. And again, one of the reasons that I set up the YouTube channel was to kind of showcase how it should all look when it's all said and done. Some people, if they haven't got original covers on these things, or they've taken them off and not taken any photos for reference, they assume they put a cover on the top of the frame and they'll be like, oh, the cover's too big, it's been made wrong. What they don't realise is it effectively waterfalls over both the front and the back there. So obviously if you straightened everything up, you'd be sort of out here and out here. So again, it's this level of understanding that you need when trimming these things up, and this is where we're here to help with either this channel to show you how it's meant to look, and of course if you need more in-depth photos or just a conversation with me about it, then I'm more than happy to do that. Same again on the lower backrest section here, leather all on the front there, but then the retainers are in vinyl there. And then this backrest section here, again, all of this section here is leather. This top section here is leather, which comes down onto the side. These bits here are leather, but then everything else is vinyl. So you've got, there's a little retainer that comes around there that's covered up, that's vinyl. Obviously this back bit here is vinyl, this is vinyl. these sideboards of vinyl there. Then the rear luggage area, that was always just vinyl there. Obviously they are missing the runners. We've done the runners in there because we have to. That's the way the seat is trimmed. But the customer kept the runners for those bits because he wants to do them at those and to allow him to apply a bit of budget elsewhere for other things. But we are supplying him with the replacement rubber that goes on the chrome strips for those. So we can replace those as well. To look at a few more things in depth, obviously I've mentioned the embossed leather. It's worth noting these seats are what I refer to as cherry red, and they are grained. We can also offer smooth for most colours, and we can also offer Vomel, Connolly Vomel, which is the official leather used by a lot of cars during the sort of 50s, 60s, 70s era. So embossed pleats, which was common to the Series 2s and Series 3s, often referred to as perforated. Let's zoom in on it. So we can offer that. We do offer that as standard for those era cars unless explicitly stated otherwise. But then the trimming process, you've got to make sure the pleats line up. You've got to make sure these areas here get nicely formed. They're a really tricky part of the seat, actually getting it nice. They're obviously new molded latex foams, but you do have to work to get the covers sitting nicely within those areas without creases. It is a bit of an art form to these sorts of things. But they're all fairly standardized. The foams are literally a molded foam, so they're very standardized. The rubberized horsehair on the back is mostly standardized, but it's an element that it's a pretty easy item to edit at your end there. And again, do refer to earlier videos to see a bit more in depth there. Then you also get a latex foam for the headrest as well, which is of course standardized. With that element as well, whether it's you or your professional trimmer, it's worth noting that we also standardize as much as we can in terms of the covers themselves. Everything is cut on our in-house leather CAD CNC machine. It actually cuts all of our soft materials, vinyls, carpets, headliners, hoods, leather. The leather process is very cool. I'll have to get that up on YouTube one day because it's a really cool process. But everything is standardized. It's all cut to millimeter precision. Then we sew by notch basis. So we know that the seat covers are going to be extremely standardized. It's very hard for us to make a mistake internally because of the way we set this up. And thus, if we can get these seat covers looking this way, then so should a professional trimmer or yourself. It might take time, but that's the important factor. And that's the important thing to remember with trimmers sometimes is they've quoted a price based on time. As soon as they start struggling because they've underestimated the amount of time it should take, they'll start rushing, they'll start making excuses. And this is where we fall back to the YouTube channel to show you that we know what we're doing with these sorts of things, and thus to take, should we say, anything that professional trimmers say with a bit of a pinch of salt, because I've heard every excuse in the book from them, and ultimately they've run out of time, they're getting frustrated with the seat, they realise they haven't quoted enough for the job, and thus they start to rush and make excuses. So we're just trying to be as open and transparent as possible with these sorts of things, and that's the truth of the matter. Going on to the rear seats, obviously a very similar setup. You have the embossed leather, you had this side seam that goes from left to right on there. Obviously I've mentioned the kind of waterfall effect that you get on the front where it comes down, both front and back. That carried on as a principle throughout the seats. It's worth noting as well, the crucial thing on these is matching up the pleats, both on the front seats, which is a bit easier. The rear seats is quite a bit harder for the exact reason that they're done in 3 pieces. So what you actually have to do is start with the hardest one, which is this one, unfortunately. And the reason for that is this is on a framework, so you can, if I get around the other side, I'll show you, you can make markings on the framework of where the pleats are, which is what these white lines are here. There you are, my scruffy handwriting saying pleats, because that's where they were originally. So then you match up this cover with those markings there, and then you work forward from that. So then this one has to match up to this one here, because you can't really make the same markings on there here particularly easily. You can to a certain extent. You can see there I've done black lines, but other elements of it are very hard to do. Actually, that one there you can essentially do. You can see I've done the black lines there. It's actually this cushion base here that's very hard to do, because obviously it's spring units. So that's a very key part of it. A lot of people will start with the cushion or the lower backrest because they're a bit more straightforward in the grand scheme of things, but ultimately they're very editable in terms of the pleat left and right, whereas this isn't. So it's always actually easier to start with this, even though this is the hardest part. Worth noting on this as well, you get the good bit of curvature on there. The piping does go sort of out, in, etc. And this section here is always a bit of a pain. We've had lots of people over the years saying that this area doesn't fit correctly. It does, you just have to play with it. It's a frustrating area really, because it's going in and out with the piping so quickly. You're using brand new materials on effectively kind of 60-year-old foams. Even if you build up that foam, you've still got a fairly soft foam underneath there, and you need firmness and rigidity on that area because of the angles it's quickly taking and shaping. So what you tend to have to do is use upholstery wadding to pack out a little bit during the trimming process. You can't kind of preempt it and put it on there. What you have to do is do a couple of dummy fits and then end up putting some extra foam or upholstery wadding in this sort of section here. We've done a bit there, a bit there, and a bit down these bits here to really plump it out, and that gets you the finish there. You shouldn't expect it to be plug and play. It will never be that way. And whereas the other elements, you're still using the old foams for a lot of them, because it's not following that quick in and out curve, you don't have the same problem. So that area is always a particular area of confusion there, so just bear that in mind with those elements of things. Also, this backrest area here, the order in which you do certain things is crucial, especially when you come to these sections here, because they are pop riveted on, as you can see. They're panels trimmed up, and then you have to kind of go through the holes and match it all up. So there's definitely an order to it. You've then got these sort of side panels here. This bit comes around here, this gets clamped on. So there's an area, there's definitely an order to the way you do that. One that I'm not going to try and remember at this stage because I'll get it wrong for sure, but I have got a record of it that our trimmer uses each time. But ultimately, looks great when it's all said and done. So all is well that ends well, as they say. So they're kind of the rear seats, a bit of a background to it all, but as you can see, lovely results. Then rear luggage floor, fairly straightforward. Bits of ply trimmed with vinyl all the way round. Nice and easy. Obviously, we haven't done the runners on these. Customers are going to be doing them, but obviously you're basing the runners on these runners here and everything going backwards, in theory, from it. So again, that's always something you've got to kind of maintain, is don't assume that the holes on the back of here are correct. Go by what you've got there and move everything back, because that's the way it's all going to line up when it's in the car. Obviously, we can supply new rubbers if you need, often advisable because the old ones are crumbling away. We can even supply new chromes if you want, but we do encourage people to reuse their old chromes. The old chromes, the aftermarket ones are good, but they're expensive for what they are effectively. So it's always best to try and reuse originals where possible. Anyway, I thought I'd just kind of showcase that. Like I say, it's really to show and prove how good and well-fitting our products are, and really to drum that message in that don't assume everyone offers the same. They don't, otherwise they would all have a YouTube channel like mine, but none of them do. So really do want to kind of use this as a bit of a marketing tool to really show and prove how good our products are. And I think, showing a video is arguably the best way, versus obviously being here in person, which is hard for a lot of people. So whether you want to send us your seat frames and we can do the whole job for you, regardless, always use one of our seat kits, because you should then have the ability to attain the same results as we've achieved here. And like I say, we're more than happy to help and guide you or your professional trimmer in these sorts of things. And when it comes to trimming, I've always found it's about swallowing your ego and realizing that some people, and this works both ways, some people just have more experience in certain areas than other people. We do the same jobs over and over and over and over again, so I'm confident in our knowledge base that these things fit. But there are certain other areas of the car, excuse me, that I know that other people out there might have a bit more knowledge base than me, and I'll always be open and listen to these sorts of things. That's what makes us so good as a company, is that we are reactive to these sorts of things and we do listen. We're not stubborn, but we do push back when we know that certain details have been done the correct way. So just bear that in mind. Anyway, just thought I'd like to show you all that element of things. I hope you found the video interesting. Please remember to like, subscribe. Of course, check out our other videos on our channel and subscribe to see any further updates. This is an ever-growing channel. I really want to make it into a nice resource centre for the restoration industry. So please do subscribe and share with other enthusiasts out there. And be sure to check us out next time. Thanks again.